she actually was very important in Cuyahoga County as well, because she was the first director of the Witness Victim Service Center for Cuyahoga County. But then she moved out of Ohio and went to other regions. Grace served as the administrator of the Job Corps, Unemployment Insurance, Office of Workforce Security, and many, many other important administrative posts. And then she moved into the National, and then she is administrator with the Department of Labor, where she is at this point in time. She was responsible for special programming, and that involved training and employment issues. And then she came back to Ohio after 30 years. And yes, almost. And now she leads a very special project in the Cleveland area with 9 other federal agencies looking to develop strategies for economic development, and that would be in and around the city of Cleveland. Hopefully she'll be able to tell us a little more about that as well. And then her presentation tonight is about jobs. So would you please welcome Grace Kilbane.
Well, good. Well, hi. Thank you for inviting me to spend some time with you tonight. What I'd like to do is kind of hit on sort of 3 big themes tonight, and then have a chance to hear from you and maybe have a discussion or get your input. And so what I'd like to cover fairly quickly, I talked to Jackie about this, I would like to talk a little bit about what I'm doing here on the Strong Cities, Strong Communities initiative, which is a White House initiative, and then talk a little bit about the topic, jobs. Where are we coming off of the Great Recession? And then finally, what kinds of tools and services and programs are there to help people with jobs and job training in Cuyahoga County and nationally as well. So, as Jackie told you, I have been with the U.S. Department of Labor for, about 25 years now. And in that time, I've spent most of my time in Washington with a couple little stints as regional administrator in Kansas City and Boston thrown in there. And about a little over a year ago, the White House announced an initiative that it wanted to pilot to help cities in a different way by basically putting teams of federal staff kind of right in with the city to help the city on its economic development strategies. And so the White House chose 6 cities, and those 6 cities are Cleveland, Detroit, Fresno, Memphis, New Orleans, and Chester, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Philadelphia. And there was a sort of an analysis done of each of those cities in advance of their being chosen, and a decision made about what kinds of things those cities needed help with from the federal government. And so each city, there's a team of federal employees in each city, which is different, which depends on what the city needed or what the city wanted to work on. So in Cleveland, there's sort of 3 big areas that we've been working on over the year. One is the port. Cleveland Port is such a big economic driver, of course, for the region. And there's issues that are way beyond me, like dredging and things like that, although they're very interesting. And some of the navigable issues in the Cuyahoga River. There's this Irish town bend that could collapse into the river and block traffic in the Cuyahoga River, which would be a disaster, obviously. So the port is one area. And so we have agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and others that are on our team because they're dealing and helping with the port, some of the port issues. Another area is land use. Cleveland used to have 900,000 people living in the city, and now it has less than 400,000 people living in the city. Some of your suburbs also probably have some of the same issues, or they had big legacy industries that, boarded up their doors and left town, and now you've got these big pieces of property, and what do you do with them? So what do you do with the land use issues? So there's everything from demolition of properties and the land banks that have been formed, brownfields initiatives to clean up some of the more toxic properties, etc. And then the other sort of big area, which is the area that I'm here working on, is education, economic development, and workforce. And we have a number of projects that we're working on with that, which I'll get to in a minute. So the idea was to put us here on the ground, and when I heard Cleveland was one of the cities, I said, I'll volunteer to go to Cleveland, because of course this is my hometown, and my family's all here still, and my husband's from here, and his family's all here, and of course we spend at least 6 times a year, if not more, driving up and down the Pennsylvania Turnpike to come back to Cleveland for holidays and birthdays and stuff anyway. So we moved back about a year ago for this temporary project, which is sort of a 1 to 2 year commitment. And right now we're working with the city on what year 2 will be and what's needed from them on that. In addition to our team, which is here, and we're federal employees who then go back to our agencies, there's also a fellows program that is funded as part of this initiative to add capacity to the city. And so 3 fellows started a couple months ago. They're, mid-career, high experience, great credentials, master's degrees, PhDs, etc. And so we're funding 3 fellows who are working in economic development, community development, and land use full-time for the city for a 2-year period of time. And that's funded with a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation and with the help of the German Marshall Fund. So that's kind of what I've been working on here, and it's been great to be home, as even though I've been gone a long time, Cleveland's what I always consider home. I think, that's where you're from, your family's still here, what the heck, Excuse me, I've got a cold, so. All right, so let me move on to, so coming off the Great Recession. We all know that the recovery has been very slow and very difficult, and there's still millions of workers nationwide that are out of work. We know that long-term unemployment has been an issue. It's as big as it was in the Great Depression, or bigger. It's as big as we as a workforce have ever had to deal with it, because our programs didn't exist in the Great Depression. They were kind of born out of the Great Depression, the unemployment insurance program, and some of our jobs programs. So it's still a difficult and slow recovery. Ohio is doing, somewhat better than other states are. I think that you hear the governor talk about that quite a lot. The United States unemployment rate in September was 7.8%. Ohio is 7%. Cuyahoga County is 6.9%. But, we do have, as I said, we still have, almost 45,000 workers who are unemployed, and many of them in this long-term category. So there still are a lot of people who are looking for jobs. On the good side, though, we can see job postings picking up and picking up and picking up. And so, for example, I don't have it for the county, but for the Northeast Ohio region, for the month of September, like middle of August to middle of September, there were, Northeast Ohio region is 18 counties, and it's like the Ohio Economic Development Region. There were 91,600 jobs posted. And that was 3,800 more than a month before. So you can see that, the number of job postings are picking up. We also know that, I think one of the good things that I've observed being in the Cuyahoga County area is that there has been a lot of attention paid to what are the industries that seem to be sort of the backbone of this economy. And so there's been analysis done, there's been work done. I think that you could all probably pick them off the top of your head when I looked at the information that Tri-C left back there. Advanced manufacturing, healthcare are the two that are back there, certainly. Information technology is another area that we hear a lot of need for. And we do have projections that the state of Ohio publishes that tells you, for the next 2 years, what are the industries that we expect the most growth in or the most decline in. And those are published and available on the Ohio Means Jobs website. So I kind of went in and looked at those. And of course, when you do projections, there are things that you may not have any data on yet. So, you do projections. These are from 2011 to 2013, a 2-year period of time. Didn't really have the casinos open then, right? So it's a little hard to, to exactly project that. I mean, they do some estimating. And we didn't have all that big explosion of that oil and gas and stuff down in the Marcellus Shale, which is certainly adding some major promise to job creation. I'm sure you've seen some of the numbers that are thrown around, a couple 100,000 jobs, whatever. Excuse me, let me get my water. Thanks. But, for example, the projections show that, some of the bigger growth that is being projected are in manufacturing, with 23,500 jobs being created over the next couple years, professional and business services, healthcare, mining, which goes to start looking at some of those oil jobs. And then the losers that they project over the next couple years, and these probably won't surprise you either. What do you think the loser industries would be in Ohio over the next 2 years? Losing jobs, that means. Jobs declining. Well, one of them is real estate, right? Real estate rental and leasing. Another is actually utilities, which is interesting, and I'll get back to that in a minute. And the biggest loser in terms of numbers of jobs, the percentage is only 1.9%, but numbers of jobs, I think, strikes particularly close to your hearts. Local government, particularly. Yeah, government is the biggest loser with 13,600 jobs, 200 of them from the local government. So that would include, federal, state, and local. So, you always get a dynamic in a labor market. There are things that are growing, there's things that are shrinking. But, I think that the overall picture is that we see this steady recovery. But at the same time, you keep reading articles and seeing employers on TV saying, well, I have jobs, but I can't find anybody to fill them, right? So it's like, well, what's the deal? What are the issues here? What are the issues? Is there a skills gap? We keep hearing there's a skills gap, that there's people that are out of work, they don't have the skills that the employers need. And, it's a big question. I mean, surely there are employers that are having difficulty filling certain jobs. And some of the ones that we're hearing especially are like in manufacturing, where they're really gearing up, like CNC operators and welders and things like that they're coming into the employment connection and they're asking, they'll hire whoever they can find with those skills. But does that really mean there's a gap? I was talking to my friends at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and, they're the numbers geeks, and of course they're like, we don't see any evidence of a skills shortage yet. We would expect to see, wages going up and, other indicators in the country that you would get evidence, not just sort of this like feeling, So BLS is saying there's no evidence. Governor Kasich is saying, well, gee, I keep hearing this from employers. They can't find the workers they need. You got all these people that are unemployed and they can't find the workers. It's crazy, right? So he created a new office, an Office of Workforce Transformation, and he tasked that office with, well, go out and find out what the skill gap is. Go ask employers what they need. So they're working on that. I think the first survey that they did was in Cincinnati, and I don't know, out of like a couple hundred surveys they sent out, I think they got 6 back. So, this is not an easy thing to do in terms of getting out there. And even if employers know what they're going to need in 5 years, which most of them don't. Are they going to tell you, is it proprietary? What does it really mean? So there's some issues around that. Regionally, there's a group that's called the Regional Economic Competitiveness Strategy. I don't know if any of you have heard about this. It's being led by Team NEO and Fund for Our Economic Future, which are kind of your local, as well as the Greater Cleveland Partnership, the regional chamber. They're kind of leading this with some of the philanthropic organizations like Cleveland Clinic, etc., to take a look at developing a new regional economic competitiveness strategy for the 18-county area. And they have a work group that's called the Talent Action Team that's also like diving into the data to try to figure out, can we talk about what the skill gaps are? Can we really identify them? Can we do anything about it? Can we identify some strategies? And I have been attending those meetings, and they've been, really interesting. And then we have an organization in town called the Cleveland Cuyahoga County Workforce Investment Board. You guys aware of that, I hope? Which is set up by federal law. Under the Workforce Investment Act, it is led by employers to kind of oversee workforce issues in Cuyahoga County. And that's who I've been working with under the Strong City, Strong Communities Initiative. We have a work group which we've pulled together, which is called the Strategic Workforce Alignment Group, or SWAG, as we call it. We have a cooler name than REX, we think. Cooler acronym. And what we're trying to do is just come up with practical solutions to connect data that's already there. There's industry associations that know what they're looking for in the hospitals or nursing homes on the healthcare side, or advanced manufacturing in the Cleveland area. Excuse me. The problem is that that information is not necessarily connected in a way that teachers can use it when kids are trying to figure out, gee, what jobs are going to be out here in the Cleveland area that are going to be any good? Or that if somebody comes into the workforce system, that the person that's counseling that person that just lost their job, how do my skills that I had in this job translate into a different job? Like, what do I need to do? What's going to be growing? What's my best bet to get retraining in the Cleveland area? So we're trying to come up with just some very practical solutions that maybe we can put in place to strengthen that alignment. So there's a lot of activity. There's lots of articles. There's even like this little book that's really a good book that's just been published on, is there really a skills gap? It's kind of a big debate that's going on. But we know that there's a problem, that needs some attention. Actually, I was reading a couple surveys. Somewhere between a third and 84% of all employers say they can't find workers for the jobs that they need, that there is a gap and a skills problem. What are the other issues? Well, as I said, we have a bit of a knowledge gap because career counseling kind of doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the high schools. It doesn't, even if you go to the community college, it's like, they've got really these great brochures and stuff, but it's like, how do you really get to explore what all the occupations are? My agency in Washington keeps track of the occupations. We have 900 occupations that we keep track of in terms of, and we're the only ones that do it. So there's 900 occupations. How do you find out about where the good jobs, where the good careers? How do we do a better job with career counseling or career exploration? Not just for our programs in education, but for, people sitting around their kitchen table. I've got two nieces that are 24 that drive me nuts. I'm like, they got their associate's degree, and one of them is working at Panera, and the other one's tending bar at Fatheads. So, it's like, what are you guys going to do? And I know everybody's got examples of that, right? So there's kind of a knowledge gap on what's out there. We also know there's somewhat of a timing problem. Because, you get a trend. So you get a trend that says, one of these handouts is the nursing assistant, STNA. We need more of those. But by the time you do the course, which may take 1 year or 2 years to get all the certifications that you need, then maybe the trend isn't quite there. You're not catching up with it. So today you need this skill, but maybe something else overtakes it in a year or 2 years. Actually, there's a few of us that graduated from Cleveland Marshall Law School, and I don't know, Brian, if you followed that one on last year, some law school, the graduates couldn't get jobs, so they were suing the university for training them in becoming a lawyer because there were no jobs for lawyers, So, I mean, this doesn't happen just on your mid-skill jobs, I mean, there's people at very high level that are, it's a timing problem. It's like, when do things catch up with? It's a market. Obviously, we all know if we could predict markets, we could be like really rich or something, right? The other problem with the timing problem is you get these employers who say, I know my workforce. Half of my workforce could walk out today because they're baby boomers. And there's no pipeline. So before the big crash of the economy in '08, there was an industry that was really worried about this, and it was the utility industry. Because, these are the guys that, we just had a recent example of this, right? The guys that get up on the telephone poles when nobody else wants to be outside and all of our electricity is out. And so there's been a big projection about that workforce sort of aging out, being eligible to retire. So what happens? Of course, the economy crashes. We're losing 800,000 jobs a month. And these people are eligible to retire, but, your 401k plans, tanked. The economy's crummy. You're nervous about retiring, so you hold on, right? So we were meeting with some energy industry folks here in Northeast Ohio maybe about a month ago. And, they're saying the same thing that I heard them say in 2007 because they still know that all these people are like over 55, And we asked them, we said, when's the last time you hired somebody? And they said that they hadn't hired anybody in 7 years. So if you were in 2007, pursuing that job, here, and, the companies are saying, well, we know we're going to have this problem. So, you've got this sort of timing issue, which is a little tricky. And that's why I thought it was interesting when I saw that the utilities are projected job losers in the projections data. So that's a challenge. We also know that job matching is a bit of an issue because, job matching is all done electronically now. So, all these jobs are posted on the online, and everybody sends in their resume. And there's all these various software that read the resume. It's got to have the correct match and, all that stuff. And of course now, with the labor market being still very difficult, you get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications for entry-level jobs. And, so these screening tools kind of go through and what our folks at Employment Connection that work with employers are also telling you, it's like a buyer's market, right, for employers. I mean, I just moved back. My husband and I closed on a house yesterday here in Rocky River, actually. And so when I first started looking, I'm like, hey, it's a buyer's market. I'd like a house on the lake, close to the city, that's a ranch, just one floor, for $250,000. That's what I want. I mean, it did not exist, but, that was like my starting point. So employers are asking for more credentials for the same jobs than they would have in like 2007 because it's a buyer's market. I could get somebody with more skills than I needed before. They're all asking for experience. So like if you just graduated, you got all the credentials, but you don't have work experience, they're kicking you out on the experience thing. They're also trying to buy you, like my $250,000 house at the lake, at the lowest wage they can get you at the market. So there's some issues with the matching price, which there always are. I mean, it's a market. But we also know that, because there's lots and lots of data on this, that education and training of your labor force, just generally speaking, is what's going to indicate prosperity for your community. And so, I lived in Washington, D.C. area for the last, 20 years. And Washington, D.C. is one of the most highly educated metropolitan areas in the United States. I think it is actually the highest educated metropolitan area. And it's thriving. Boston is another one. So, you can look at these places that have these high education completion rates, and you know that that's an important thing. So here in Cuyahoga County, we have, excuse me, about 25% of our population has a bachelor's degree or better. That's below where we should be for areas our size. In Cuyahoga County, we have a high school graduation rate of 78%. The United States average is 88%. So we're 10 points below even on the high school graduation rate. So what are we doing about all this? Well, there's a number of initiatives that are looking at this. Like I said, there's a lot of planning stuff at the federal, state, local level, which is good. But there are also some initiatives. In this area alone, there are 4 college completion programs that are in existence that are trying to figure out how to help people complete college. And one of them is saying, hey, you got all these people that almost graduated. Let's see if we can find them first and, help them get their degree. But that's one of the issues that they're looking at. One of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention is in the Department of Labor, which is where obviously I have been for the last 20 years, we have a number of electronic tools that are on our on the website for people to go and either explore careers or to get on job banks to apply for jobs, etc. And since you didn't have a hookup to the web today, I'm sorry that I'm not able to actually show them to you. But what I have here is sort of a one-pager of links that will give you not only what these websites are, but these separate links give you tutorials on how to use them. So for example, if you had, if you have somebody in one of your constituents or somebody in your family who's a veteran coming back and they're saying, I was a veteran and this is what I did before I got my honorable discharge. We have a thing called My Next Move for Veterans. You can go in there, you can write in whatever your job was, and it will tell you how that translates to the civilian labor force. What that job in the military, what it gets you in the civilian labor force. Another one, which is the skills translator and the skills my future. So if somebody gets laid off and they're like, I don't know what to do, you can go in there and write your current job, and it will pop up the 4 or 5 jobs that use those skills, and then it will tell you, do you need some extra training for this particular job? If you do, where you can get that training, and it will also connect you to, are there jobs open in that occupation, and what do they pay? And the third one that I just want to kind of bring your attention to is the one that says My Next Move, which is what the screenshot sort of is on this one on the top. And that is a really good career exploration site. So you can go in and look either by industry or occupation, or if you're clueless and don't know what you want to do when you grow up, you can go in and, they'll take a little test like what interests you. Do you like to work with people or not? Do you want to be outside? Those kinds of things to give you a little bit of an interest profiler. This also is a shot of Career One Stop, which you can see .org, which is our key site, which I have on the very top of the page, careeronestop.org. You can get to every one of these tools on that site. You should have your office bookmark it. And as you can see, you can get to all of these topics, explore careers, education, training, job search, et cetera, et cetera. So I leave you that. The little tutorials, they're like 15 minutes. You go on, you click on it, and it will tell you in like 10 or 15 minutes how to use that website. It walks you through it. The other handout that I brought is from the Employment Connection. How many of you have ever worked with the Employment Connection? One. Okay, so the Employment Connection is the sort of one-stop system for Cuyahoga County. So the Workforce Investment Act, which is the federal law, that authorizes our investments in helping people look for jobs and job training, created this system of one-stop career centers, which unfortunately are called different things in different places. Here they're called the Employment Connection. And as it says, it helps you connect to jobs. There's two, as it says on here, there's 3 locations on the bottom of the Employment Connection. The Brook Park Road one, which is like right down the street here, and the one on Bolivar Road, which is by the Indians Field, are the 2 full service offices where kind of all the programs are there. And, you know, they move to they have a really good service delivery strategy, I think, where their services are based on what are the needs of employers. So if you go in there and you're eligible for job training and interested, they'll work with you on that. But if there's not a job at the end of that training, they're not going to invest in it. And so they'll help you, you know, figure that out based on your interests and stuff. You know, they have 300, 400 people a day coming through that, the Bolivar location, which is where I've been sitting since I came here on the Strong Cities. So they see about 13,500 people a quarter, and place in jobs a little over 1,000. So if you know anybody that's looking for a job, you should tell them to stick their resume in this system, because as employers come and employers say, hey, you know, I need whatever, welders or nursing assistants or whatever, they run it against their database, and whoever's got that background, they will call them and see if they're interested in going after that job. So it would expose you to, you know, yet another thing. The other thing is that, you know, with the county and the city, their economic development activities, sometimes those agreements include, you know, hiring certain jobs to public worker systems. You know, you're exposing those to the greater public. And they do those too. So, you know, you've got some pretty big deals that are coming into Cleveland Cuyahoga County where, you know, companies are either relocating or expanding, and they are pledging that they'll hire so many workers through the public employment system. So it gets you exposed to those jobs too. You know, they've had some interesting job orders. They hired the scuba divers at the aquarium, for example. You know, it's like, who would have thought it, you know? But so what this handout gives you is, on the front, it's sort of the, I guess you can't tell what's the front, but the one that says job seeker database, that's like to the individual people who need help, you know, finding a job. And these are the services that they offer and the locations. And, you know, if you don't want to go there in person, you can go onto the website, you can file, you know, you can put your resume in there, etc. On the back is their handout that they give to employers. And it shows you what they do for employers in terms of helping them post a job and recruit. They do recruitments on site at both Brook Park as well as downtown, where employers come on site and interview people there. And it also gives you a list of some of the employers who work with them. So if you have constituents or people that you know need help, it is, you know, a free public service, and, you know, I think that they do a great job, and there's a lot of tools that are available for people to use. So with that, why don't I just stop and see, you know, what's on your mind? Yes?
I'm interested in at least posting some of this information on the website of our community, as well as maybe in a newsletter. Which would you suggest getting out to the public, as far as the Employment Connection, or maybe your website from the DOL?
Well, you know, they kind of do two different things. I mean, the Employment Connection, I think, is worthwhile posting that for somebody that's looking for a job today, or an employer that needs help today in getting a job posted. But I do think that at least our tools on, I don't know, I just feel that we need so much more information out there on career exploration than's out there. But You know, like when I came to Cleveland, you know, nobody that was at the local level knew that we had these great tools sitting at the national level and on the web, right? So, I mean, that says a couple things. First of all, the fact that we announced it once and had a training session once didn't exactly cut it, right? But it's also, I think, that people are so busy, and there's all these tools that keep getting developed all the time that you almost don't know which one to use for what when. But my preference, I would put my next move, or I would put Career One Stop, because you can get to everything through there. So I would put Employment Connection, and at the top, careeronestop.org.
Unfortunately, those of us in this area are experiencing, and we've seen it for a number of years, a brain drain. As students are graduating from college even with advanced degrees, they're going elsewhere. How can you help, and what's being done to try to bring these people to, or encourage them to stay in this area rather than going to Chicago, New York, or one of these other quote-unquote glamorous cities?
Right. Well, I'm not myself working on anything in that, but there are things that are going on. There's a group that opened up maybe about a year or two ago called Global Cleveland, who is doing, outreach to not only try to keep people here, but try to attract people to come to Cleveland. And there's this group, which I'm trying to remember the name of it, and I'm drawing a blank. There's
Cleveland just announced a new person to head it up, I think. It was in today's paper.
Oh, was it in today? I know Larry Miller stepped down, but I didn't see the plain dealer today.
I forgot her name. She was very much involved with the Detroit Sherway area.
Oh, okay.
Gordon Square. What's her name?
Yeah.
Roller. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know her. There's another effort.
I think you should get to know her.
Okay. I probably will, because I did meet Larry Miller through the Global Cleveland thing. There is a bit of a vibe going on in Cleveland with young people moving downtown. I'm sure you've heard about that. There's kind of like a waiting list for apartments in downtown Cleveland. There's like 10,000 people that live down there now. And, that's kind of surprising to me, having left, in 1983, which is when I left, because there really wasn't anything. The flats a little bit, the East Bank of the Flats, which I was also shocked to see that closed down. I might have, but anyway.
I think you have a lot to learn. Cleveland's changed quite a bit.
It's changed a lot. And there's a really great, this is my opinion, okay? So first of all, I'm a fan of Cleveland, okay? But when I came back, and really came back, because I come back all the time, but I'm with family, so I wasn't living in the city and paying attention. I think that there's just been great things that have happened. There's a tremendous kind of energy. There's a new energy that I don't remember seeing and feeling. And this group of young people, they're trying to keep people downtown, and they're trying to do events to, talk their friends into staying in Cleveland and living in Cleveland and identifying what the issues are for them in terms of making it a place where they want to be. So I know that there's a group that's doing that, and I think that there's a few other things that are going on around trying to keep people attracted and staying here. And of course, you need the opportunities, right? You need the brains to stay here, but you need the cool opportunities for them to connect with. And I think that some of the entrepreneurial stuff that's going on, through Jumpstart, and some of the biohealth thing that's being funded, to fund entrepreneurs and fund new businesses. I think that there's a lot of excitement around there and a lot of opportunity.
The Jumpstart's that group in Shaker Heights?
No, they're right on the, what do they call that, Midtown corridor?
Oh.
Where it used to be that wasteland between Cleveland State and University Circle, that is all being developed now, that health line goes down. It's very cool.
There's a group in Shaker was instrumental in providing the initial funding that works with people that have ideas, new entrepreneurial ideas, and developing them. And some of them have really mushroomed into some significant projects.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple different things. There's also a new micro lending program that started in Cleveland called, I think, ECDI, like in July, and they give like little teeny grants, like, you know, $500 or a couple $1,000 to, you know, like the cookie baker or the, you know, somebody that wants to start their own business too. So I think that there are several of those around, which I think is adding to that sort of energy and creativity of the city.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Steve Bennett. I'm a former councilman, also president of his organization. There are two things concern me. One is the marketing effort that needs to be done about Cleveland. It needs a focus. We have a medical focus right now. Every one of the cities you talk about, Chicago, even in Memphis now, you talk about the Research Triangle, has a focus of what they are and what they can be. Cleveland has a focus for innovation, invention, and creation. But one of the things you keep on mentioning is the disconnect between the number of jobs that allegedly go baking in IT, CNC operators. And I've looked into this before. Benvenue was one of the companies mentioned by our esteemed colleague Don Sanders, who's not here right now. But what this seems to be is also a wage gap. We had the automotive industry in here. They start around $25, $21 an hour, and there's no longer that job. We compete with the Pacific Rim. It is moving now from China into Malaysia. It will eventually end up in India. But to compete with that, we're going to have to use our brains, our head, and quality. That's one of the things I don't see. But in talking about education, you need to bring industry in. You started by industry. They become partners with Tri-C, with the local colleges, and not an outside. The cost of college is way out of sight. And not everybody needs college, but they do need advanced training throughout their lives. I'm 69, and I've had 7 careers. I'm the beginning of the baby boomers. Baby boomers think what's coming. The linemen here, you talk about that. First Energy or other companies are deregulated on the generation end, but not on the transmission end. The transmission end with the poles, they cut the workforce. But it's the older workforce, the baby boomers, who have the obligation to train the younger ones. Where are the apprenticeships from the unions? It's time that this thing got together, not just government, it's got to be the whole unit. And industry itself, including unions, have to work together along with education to supply the need. So what if I train somebody else's worker? Because I get his worker in turn. That is the big need, and it's going to be changing. And also, this is the information age, no longer the manufacturing. To manufacture, we use information. I'll give you an example of what I mean, a very simple one. At the cryo building at the Cleveland Clinic, you go there in the morning at 0700. You'll find there's a line of cars almost blocking the front of the building. Do you realize, without even bothering with HIPAA, you have the records that can tell you when the appointments are in that building, and you also have the records of when they leave. This is using that information to staff the valet parking, which you have, because they all come in wheelchairs. That's the oncology department upstairs on the 8th floor. That's just one way. It's using the information age to our advantage. I'll leave you one last thing. The model trains industry all went overseas to China. They found out a couple things about Chinese. One is they love to copy things, and they make them inferior, very cheaply. Also here, what happened when Mattel had lead in their toys? We have people out of work here now out of foreign plastics, right down in Mansfield. Where's the opportunity? Why are we need to be summoned into motion. We need leaders to do that. But they got to come from all 3 areas and not just one.
You're right. Well stated. And you know, those efforts that I mentioned, they're like the regional economic competitiveness strategy that's being led by the Chamber and Team NEO and private industry with, you know, they've got the industry associations and private sector and education, you know, at the table. And some of what they need to take on are those issues. It is clear that, you know, we need more education
We need folks to be educated in the right things, whether it's mid-skilled jobs or college. And we need to have, as you said so well, industry, education, workforce together. And we need more apprenticeships. We need more work experience programs. We need internships. We need more co-ops, because we know that for anyone, whether it's a professional or someone that is in like more of a trades kind of occupation, that it is really important to have that work experience as part of their educational experience. And so there are some efforts to increase those. I don't think there's enough, but I think that it's headed kind of in that direction. And it takes all of us. I mean, you guys are leaders, you know, at the municipal level. It takes all of us sort of, you know, starting to row in the same direction, I think, to, you know, to bring the light on that, as you've mentioned.
You recently mentioned, just very briefly.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Oh, really? The mic's on. Yeah, the mic's on. You recently alluded to some semblance of funding. I recently went to one of the technical institutes in my neighborhood, which I was not aware of. The manufacturers and the people who are on the board come in and tell the students and tell the teachers exactly what they're looking for. And sometimes they do the internship kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I had an opportunity to talk to some of the teachers and the director, I said, exactly what does this 2-year program, which offers nursing, police forces, safety forces, and of course technology. He said, oh, it's a 2-year program and it's $44,000.
Oh my
That's a lot
God.
of money for a program like that with people who have to juggle schedules. They're working. What about grants? Where's money coming from?
Well, you know, this administration did increase the number of Pell Grants that are available for individuals to pursue college. Excuse me. And also made it easier to get student loans by wiping out sort of the middleman, the banks, basically. But you know, that issue about student loans is a big issue. If you've got some school counseling you to take out a loan for a training program that you're going to pay $44,000 for, and if you get a job, the job pays $30,000 a year, you shouldn't be in that program. You should be at the community college getting those, you know, at a much cheaper rate. So that's a problem. I mean, and the amount of debt that you know, young people, and we keep hearing all of that too. The amount of debt that young people are graduating with is huge. You know, I mean, I think that we need to make sure that, you know, I mean, I'm a product of that. I mean, I took out student loans, you know, to get through college and graduate school and law school, and it took me 16 years to pay them back. You know, but wow, was I lucky to have the opportunity to be able to have access to money so that I could pursue the education. An issue. It's a big issue. Now, with our grants, you know, there's like caps on them. So, I mean, I think the locals can put, you know, how much they'll pay for like a year of training, which I think it's like $5,000 is the top, and the average is like $2,000. So you would not see our federal grants paying for $44,000 training.
Hi, I'm Scott Lynch. I'm a Ward 4 councilman in the city of Euclid. I first want to say thanks for coming. I'm glad you're here this evening, but also that the Department of Labor decided that the city of Cleveland was one of these target cities for Cleveland. Politically and a lot of other ways is really a microcosm of a lot of the struggles that we're experiencing nationwide. Our struggles, but also our potentials with university and workforce and everything else. And so I really do feel that if this region in Cleveland is hopeful, then it's indicative that the entire nation can be hopeful. My particular question, though, is coming from the city of Euclid. We're now the 4th largest municipality in the county. Just behind the main city in Parma and Lakewood. But we're dealing with almost the identical problems in Euclid concerns of blight and sprawl and opportunity for our residents, that is happening within the city of Cleveland itself. My ward in particular is on 185th Street, so we're right bordering Euclid and Collinwood in Cleveland. So I guess my question is, although I understand that you're targeting Cleveland, what has your experience been, and how does it change when you're working with the main municipality of Cleveland versus all of the other 58 municipalities who, for all sorts of different reasons, aren't quite as plugged in and connected in the way that Cleveland might be?
Yeah, I mean, the way that for me, that is really through the county, like the county council and the county government, because this is the Cleveland/Cuyahoga County Workforce Investment Board, and so, it does serve all of the communities in Cuyahoga County. My colleagues that are working on land use issues and stuff, they're not just limited to Cleveland. I mean, it's kind of like a major focus, but it's not exclusive, because everything is regional. And, this gentleman over here is talking about the global economy. I mean, which we have. So they're not completely limited to Cleveland, because they've worked with but they work with like the Cuyahoga County Land Bank too,
Advice for an old work staff, or one of the losers that you described is local governments, public service sector. So advice for municipalities struggling to do at least the same, if not a little more with less, and a maybe older workforce. Just some advice for council members as they wrestle with budget and those kinds of things.
I don't think that. I mean, I could certainly always give you my opinion, but I don't think that's, that I'm kind of qualified. I mean, you guys have the bird's eye, view of your workforce issues at the local level. So I don't really have the information that I would feel comfortable in giving you advice in that regard.
Training, those kinds of things. I mean,
Well, I mean, obviously, there's lots of ways to improve efficiencies in any operation, any process, can be improved upon. Earlier today, I was asking the councilman here from Fairview Park what this organization, or what you guys all think of this sort of regionalism approach that has been talked about so much, and that some of you, I understand, are working on pulling some functions at least into a more regional for efficiency, things like the the 911 call and things like that. To me, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, having 56 entities doing the administrative part of what 56 entities have to do, or 59, whatever it is, seems a little crazy to me, But that's just my opinion. I don't know where you guys all are. Yes.
Well, the county is certainly involved in this. I don't know, Chuck, if you want to. The county is certainly involved, and there's a lot of initiatives coming out of the county. I don't know if Chuck might want to add to the discussion.
Before the discussion starts, I just want to thank you for coming tonight for an interesting presentation. Say that if there was more Kilbanes at the Department of Labor, this country would be running like a top.
Oh my gosh. This is why I like to be home in Cleveland. Thank you.
Yeah, for those watching on the web, that was Mike Kilbane. But Grace, part of the reason you're here is because my being on the county council and hearing David Rhines, make presentations to the county council, what they're doing, matching employers' needs to jobs, and actually getting guarantees if you pass this training, you're going to get a job. is important. And Dave couldn't be here, and he said, well, the person you should talk to is Grace Kilbane. And it was a great recommendation.
Oh,
And thank you for being here.
Dave is funnier than I am, though. He has a great sense of humor. But he's in Europe tonight,
Exactly.
so.
Can you talk to the that whole idea of if you go through the training, you have a guaranteed job?
Well, I mean, you always have this timing thing that I talked about earlier, right? I mean, regardless, but we can just do a much better job at syncing those up. So to make sure that you understand what employers are looking for and where they have vacancies and where they're looking for skills, and then, counsel people to go and get that training and then have that job for them. That is the best model. Is it perfect? No. I mean, it's not ever going to be perfect, but it's better than just, kind of letting the person say, oh, gee, I want to be a hairdresser, and say, okay, fine, here's your check, go get the training, if there's no job at the end of it. Although actually, hairdressers is one of those jobs that it is in demand. It seems to be growing a little. But, like one of the training that has come back since this recession is on-the-job training, which is kind of an expensive training because we pay for 50% of the person's salary up to a cap for like 6 months while they're being trained on the job. And the thing that I love about that in a period where you have high long-term unemployment is that you have to hire the person. The person gets hired. Now, you don't necessarily have to retain them, but if you're doing a good job on the hire side and you're training them, it's like 90% retention. So that's a really good model right now. The other thing that's been happening, which I've never seen in my career, is that employers are now sort of discriminating against unemployed workers. They're saying if you're unemployed, don't even bother applying. If it says unemployed on their resume, they're Xing them out automatically. And these are people that lost their job through no fault of their own and have work experience. And especially if they're long term, because then it's like tainted goods, or, maybe they weren't any good or whatever. So, but that's really never happened before in my career. That has not happened where employers just as a matter of fact won't talk to somebody about a job if they're unemployed. And that's something that we need to all continue to work on, I think. Good. Thank you.
We thank you so much for joining us. That was very, very informative.
Thank you.
And I also have to mention that we do have some Tri-C brochures in the back. Shanice Thomas, through our local Tri-C, provided them. She's very willing to talk to anybody about the possibilities of programming and whatever else we can come up with. And I think Mr. Germana alluded to it, but I also have to give a thank you to the gentlemen and the ladies who serve on the board, who we sit around and we talk about ideas and what do we do, how can we inform, how can we keep the Northeast Ohio City Council moving. And they deserve a pat on the back as well, not just any one of us, but as a group we function. And you can function as well. You can give us some ideas of our next forum, which is going to be in February. We don't know exactly where, but we know when. It'll be the third Thursday in February, and it will be our dinner meeting, which is always a big turnout. And we certainly would love to see you back. And if you have ideas for future forums, things you'd like to learn about, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, there is a sheet if you'd like to fill it out. Thank you.